What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Modern Craftsman podcast. Today, we are at the LBM Expo. Tyler, when were we supposed to come here?
2019? 20?
Is that true?
20. I think it's 20.
It could have been the 19.
Yeah.
Well, it's 2021 now. We are at the Rhode Island Convention Center. LBM has asked us to come here. We've done a couple things. We got one more event this afternoon. But what did we do this morning?
So this morning, we thought it was a meet and greet with some students, and it turned out it was a little bit of a panel discussion that we were on. The one was Shepley, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a building material distributor, lumberyard, Cape Cod based. Mid-Cape, also Cape Cod based. What was the other?
And I apologize. I know his name was Hunter, and I apologize. I'm totally forgetting what company he was with. But you're right. We thought it was a meet and greet, and it ended up being a panel discussion.
Yeah.
And talking about how we got into the trades.
Yeah, basically. So there was some. I think that it's a little bit of a bummer with the whole COVID thing and getting rescheduled, just because the numbers are down.
Yeah.
And even from like a school perspective, obviously there's a liability there with bringing students to this.
It's like 1/6 the amount of people, right?
Yeah, and there weren't a ton of kids. But it was good to get some trade schools out there. There was another lady who was there who wasn't trade school specific, but they had showed up with some students, and we got to talk to them about kind of why we're in the industry, what we find beneficial about it, why it's been a good path for us, which was good. I don't know about you, Nick, when I was 16, 17 years old and like you wanted to go into the trades, it was somewhat shunned on.
Yeah, totally. And I think, I had mentioned it, I think after the discussion, but I remember being in middle school and I applied to get into the vocational school, and I was a decent kid. I was, a B plus student. I was never an A student, but I was maybe a B plus student. And I remember applying and giving the application. I went back down to the counselor's office and I was like, do you think I'll get into the school? Because I just wanted to be in the carpentry program. And he looked at me and goes, dude, even the bad kids get into that school. And I'll never forget. Yeah, and I'll never forget that. And it was like he ripped the rug out from underneath me. And I was like, here I am so excited to go to the school. And I'm sure I don't even know if he's a counselor anymore, but it'd be interesting to have that conversation with him now. But it sucked. Like, I was like, oh, so this isn't a good path for me.
Yeah, especially when you're that age. I think that you're kind of coming into your own. You're establishing yourself. Like, those are formative years, and even if you don't necessarily look up to your teachers or counselors, right? They're an adult. They're somebody who you've been taught your whole life to respect and listen to,
right.
And you have somebody looking at you saying, like, yeah, this is basically the school of anyone can get in. Like,
right.
They'll accept anyone as long as you pay a tuition. So. A couple of counselors and teachers came up afterwards, and it was nice to hear them say, I guess a lot what the things that we align with and that we kind of experienced. It's important that we shed light on that for some of these students, because growing up, I guess it doesn't even matter if you're like an affluent town, well-off town. It's not something that people really push in public schools, private schools, to go into the trades, to not go to college. Towns want you to test well. They want everyone to get good grades, be successful. College admission rates go up. The town it's more desirable to grow up in that town. They can collect more tax money.
The realtors make more money.
Yeah, have better schooling.
The circle, I said it today, I think we're so blurred by it because of everyone reaping the benefits of being a better student.
Except for the students themselves.
For the student, right.
I mean, there's obviously...
with respect to, those that want to be better students versus those that aren't good students, or maybe they are good students, but they want to be in a quote-unquote blue-collar trade, which is typically looked down upon, because of the white-collar driving the college.
Yeah, and I think that, that's seeing... I don't know, when you're 16, 17, 18 years old, like, you think that you have everything under control and you know who you are and you understand how the world works. And at this point, I'm 35 and I'm looking at these kids coming in and sitting in front of us, and I can remember when I was that age, and in hindsight, I was very unsure of myself. I didn't have a path, I didn't have a direction, and that really affected not around my peers. Around my peers, I could hold my own, I was fine. But if you got me in a professional situation like today, where they're like, "Hey, go speak to these people about a potential job opportunity," like I would have just walked away and gone to the bathroom, or like skirted out of that entire conversation, because I didn't have any confidence in myself or what I wanted to do. And I'd always, I didn't have that direction. I didn't have anyone promoting the trades or following a career for me to follow a career path that made the most sense for me. So seeing these kids at this age and being able to kind of tell them, hey, you're not below anyone for wanting to do this, just because for whatever reason you're looking to get into the trades. Maybe it's because you can't afford college. Maybe it's because you don't want to take on that debt. Maybe it's just nothing that interests you, that you're not any worse off.
Right.
That doesn't classify you as a better human being, a more successful human being, just because, your parents are in the trades or you're not going to college. So I guess I wanted to make sure that they understood that.
I think in the other three panelists, they also did a really good job of kind of outlining that it isn't there's so many different paths within this industry. Like, some of those guys are sales guys, some of them are business guys. They have a business degree, they sit behind a computer and look at spreadsheets all day. That's what he likes doing, though. He likes being in the business side, but it's in his job is directly related to our industry. And I think about like our companies, it's like there's different aspects to just actually physically doing the work.
Yeah.
There's marketing, there's sales, there's, in my business, like I have project managers and superintendents and then carpenters, and then we have a mill workshop, and then we have a marketing side. It's like all of that is directly related and tied to the industry.
Are you asking people who come to you for potential jobs if they have a college degree?
No, not at all.
Right.
That wouldn't it honestly doesn't even cross my mind.
Yeah, and like I guess that's something that's generational, right? I look back even 35 now. So
I look for experience, if anything.
Yeah, so 17 years ago, I couldn't consider getting any job without that crossing. Like, I need a college degree. Nobody's going to look at you. Nobody's going to entertain you as an employee without having a college degree. And now I look at it where, like, maybe you get your foot in the door working with your hands, pushing a broom, being a laborer, work your way up for, a few years, 5 years, even if it's 10 years, and then you establish these relationships where you can either go be a PM for someone, or a super if you still want to have the belt on some, or you could go and get a job with one of your vendors.
Right.
And, like, I think that we're at the point now where if you don't have a college degree, that's not going to kind of hinder those opportunities, because I'm looking from my company, what you do, and if somebody had construction industry background and marketed themselves really well or understood that, I wouldn't care if they had a degree or not.
Right.
If somebody wanted to come be a salesman for me, and it was an exterior products company, and they were a roofing and siding contractor or worked for them for a super long time, they understand that entire industry and realm. Like, I wouldn't care if they had a college degree or not. So it's not like getting into the trades that you're really shoehorning yourself into working with your hands your whole life. You can do that if you want, but you don't necessarily have to.
Do you think that from the college perspective, there was this beyond the pressure of going there was also this like false promise of, you go to college, you're going to make really good money. And I know the answer is yes to that, but beyond that, people don't like what I guess I'm getting at is, like, why is it looked as the blue collar can't make that much money? Like, why do you think there's been this like this this persona around the fact that if you're a blue collar, you're never going to make that much money. You're capped at how much money you can make, and and maybe that's because it's directly related to like how much hourly rate working for someone. But it's you're talking about entry-level jobs, right? And I think going back to that point about college, I think that people, nowadays people are undervaluing the fact that, if I put work in, start at the ground level or entry level, I can prove myself and continue to prove myself up the ladder, even in a small business, where it's like, hey, I started with you as an apprentice carpenter, you were paying me $15 an hour, but now I'm really proficient, I'm working just as hard as you, and I'm getting just as much done as you, or, and this is how long it used to take me to do this task, and now I can do it in half the time, so I want $30 an hour.
Exactly.
And it's like there's always that ladder, and I think that, the false promise of you'll make a lot of money out of college, or you do make a lot of money out of college, compared to, well, instead of putting all the work in college that someone else is possibly paying for, like their parents, go out and get a job, start at the entry level, and for the next 4 years take an income, but work really hard, and in 4 years from now, if you prove yourself, you can be at, or you could be equal or above what you would be making with a degree.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if I have like a definitive answer to that. I would say a lot of it's just based on kind of when you look at society as a whole and averages. There's blue collar towns, there's white collar towns, and on average, if you're an attorney in the medical field, a doctor, you're typically speaking, most people in those fields make more money than people who work with their hands in a general labor sense. But that's. But
you're talking about two opposite sides of the spectrum here.
Exactly, but I think that's how people see this. They don't look into it other than these two broad categories where it's like college degree, non-college degree. But there's a lot of people within. And when you even think of the construction industry, there's a lot of people in the manufacturing end, and like every one of these big vendors and businesses, they need people within that to be white collar. So it's not just like the building and the construction market is made up of only blue collar people, right. And there's no reason that you can't transition from working with your hands to working one of these companies and having a very corporate lifestyle. But I think that when people look at it in the general sense of things, it's the way that it's kind of conveyed and illustrated. You look at TV commercials for like Ford, which is a very corporate company, and they show the rough and tough truck through the mud and steel workers throwing pipe fitters throwing pipes into the back of a truck. And it's just the way that things kind of look. But I don't think that it's not, the opportunities are there. And I think that, if you're successful in the construction industry and you make a good living, that you're going to be successful in whatever industry you're in. Right. I think that, there's a lot of people who are successful in white collar jobs that work their asses off. And I think that if they were in a building industry, they would be just as successful. It's just what interests them. Right.
It's, going back to your comment about generalizing, it is weird how we generalize construction as just construction.
One thing.
Where doctors, that's a specific part of healthcare. Where there's multiple jobs that you could take within healthcare, and there's multiple jobs that you can take within construction. And it's that generalization is, obviously through society, right? Where it's you can be, a 10-year plumber or a pipe fitter, or, an iron worker, making really good money. You've worked your way up, you're really successful at it. And then on the healthcare side, well, you could be a nurse's assistant.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the entry level job, and I apologize if I'm getting it wrong, but that there's still that growth path, and it's the fact that it's so generalized and it's so demonized, I think for these kids is unfortunate. And we did a poll in that group, and it's who here is interested in being in construction? A bunch of them raised their hand. And there was a handful that said, I'm not sure.
They were unsure, yeah.
And, the unsure, the one kid was like, well, there's just other things that I'm interested in. And it's that's fair, man. You're at a point where you can and should explore those things.
Yeah, and I think that people kind of see what they want to see. And even when you're saying white collar and you think of that image in your head, people are going to think of these very successful individuals where they're all exceptions. The average white collar person is making a modest living and supporting a modest lifestyle. They're not rich, they're not well off by any means. And that's probably the case for most blue collar people. It's just that like people look at the extremes of things. I would say that somebody who works in a union, right, as a tradesman or woman in the union is going to have a very similar lifestyle to somebody who has a general white collar position, whether you're a teacher or you work in like general business, you're a salesman. Those salaries and those lifestyles are almost the same thing. It's just that when you think of them, generally speaking, you see them as very polarizing or polarized entities where one is an extreme end of the spectrum and the other one's on the lower extreme end of the spectrum, and that's not really the case. I think that when people think of blue collar, they think of like down in the ditches, in the trenches, and when people think of white collar, they think of these people who are entrepreneurs and started their own businesses and like have multiple houses, and all those people are exceptions to the generalizations of our industry and everything else.
And there's no doubt that like some of the top industries are very much white collar. Like I think the number one wealthiest industry is like investment portfolios or something like that. And that's a white collar job. I think that, maybe one way that we get around this is like we stop separating it from white collar to blue collar, because I think of, and I'm just going to say it, like I know a lot of guys that are scrappy, meaning like they're both white and blue collar, where it's like it's not a matter of what job they have, it's a matter of what they do beyond that. Where it's like the average person, works to get paid, like goes to work to receive a check, where it's like the people that are actually creating wealth are doing something with that money, and that money is then continuing to build wealth for them. And it's like, that's something that we talked about on last week's podcast with, asset management and stuff like that. But those are the people that we're kind of classifying as the exception, because they've invested the time or the know-how to leverage whatever amount of money they're making. Like you hear all the time, it's like this guy's had a salary under six-figure salary for his whole life, but he's a multimillionaire. It's
even you think people making $250,000 a year, like you're not getting rich on that, but when you're 16, 17 years old, you could, but that, if you're making $250,000 a year in your job,
and that's all
not
you're
what's
doing,
making you rich.
Correct. You're utilizing another path to that.
Even $1 million a year, that's not what's making you rich by the time you support your lifestyle and pay your expenses and everything else. There's that it's a means to an end. And that's a contributing factor, and it may allow you opportunities, but that job is not what's making you actually rich. And I think that that's something that needs to be distinguished with these kids as well. Even just from the simple fact where you're not going to go spend a couple $100,000 on a college education, where like your first step out the door on the job, day one, assuming that you don't have parents that are paying for your education or somebody supporting that, you're starting ahead of the curve. You don't have debt that you're paying and interest that you're paying on top of that, just to start your life. But I guess at that age, I don't know if you remember what life was like at 16, 17, but I think, within your social circle, within school, sports, athletics, if you were working handyman crap, like you probably felt confident in your own abilities and what you had that was within your control. But I know when I started thinking about what I'm going to do as an adult or a grown-up, or hey, go talk to somebody about a potential job 3 years down the road, I would crap my pants.
Oh yeah, I mean, I do remember. It's like I was definitely doing side work, and I felt like I was better than my friends because I was the one working harder, and I had money to do things and buy things, and and that was just me. I was always challenging myself to be better. But at those times of work, I was still like, all right, what am I gonna do later? Like, what am I gonna do when I turn an adult? Like you said, it's like that wasn't. I didn't really see that as my path to, like, I'm eventually going to, be super wealthy by doing this every day. It was still like, well, I love doing this and I want to build houses. Is that, truly my path, and how do I get there? When I got into commercial construction, on building on a high-rise team, as a assistant project manager, there was a time where I was like, all right, this is my career.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna hunker down. I'm gonna figure out. I almost went back to school for my MBA because someone told me that, hey, that's the path to the next step, and that's how you make more money. I was like, I'll do that, and I just was so driven to climb that corporate ladder because I thought that that's what I was supposed to do because I felt like I was being an adult.
Yeah, I wonder how much of it, even seeing. It's been a couple of years since we've really like been out to these shows and everything else, just with COVID. But seeing how you kind of have to really pull the engagement out of these kids, right? Like they're sitting there and somebody speaks to them, and it's very professional, and you're pitching something, and it's very structured. And you can tell they're just kind of glazing over. And I wonder, there's so many people in their lives, especially through formal education and counselors, who just, they don't connect with. Like, they're here because they don't connect with what everyone else wants them to do in the first place for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But everything that's getting pitched to them is kind of pitched in that very formulaic, professional manner. And I don't know if that's what speaks to them, which, even starting the conversation with them, trying to kind of lighten them up and joke around with them and speak to something that they can relate to, you're going to get kids to listen a little more. I even look back at school where I never wanted to be in school ever. Like, I hated it from the time I was a little kid until...
What part did you hate?
I was bored. Like, I was bored out of my mind.
Bored because you felt like you knew more than they were teaching?
I tested well, so I could not pay attention in class, and then like before a test came, I could memorize everything and then take the test and pass. So I just didn't need to pay attention in school.
Literally polar
ever.
opposite.
Yeah, so like I knew that I would be in school and I did not have to pay attention until there was a test, and then I would just teach myself whatever I had to. So once I learned that, which was like elementary school was fun, but then like middle school age, where I was like, I don't need to be here. I know how to work the system. Like, I know that this is just about testing well. Nothing else matters.
Yeah.
I could be so misbehaved and not listen to teachers. I knew how far I could push everyone.
What about your friend group in school? Like, did you enjoy going to school for that or no?
Yeah, but like that was the only part of it really that I enjoyed, because everything else I was just sitting in class watching the clock. So I was very bored. They put me in like... They thought I wasn't stimulated enough. They would put me in the classes with the grade above me, and it'd be the same shit there.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't any different. But then, like, all these teachers were very not strict, but they followed the curriculum, right? It was like, this is what we're gonna learn. Open your textbook to this page. And I would just bored the shit out of me. So like the only classes that I enjoyed and the teachers that I enjoyed were the ones who were kind of off kilter a little bit, who like didn't necessarily teach just by the textbook. And like that's what piqued my interest, because now you're engaging with your teachers, and it's not like test tomorrow, you need to study this, and this. It was more of a practical approach to education, and for me that kept me engaged. And I think that a lot of times, even at the trade shows and at job fairs, it's very professional. Like, it's very rigid, and these kids probably show up there and they're like, yeah, this is not what we don't want to do this, you know? And then they get even more confused. So like, what am I going to do now? I like thought I wanted to get into the trades. We just went to this trade show and this job fair, and it's a bunch of people with shirts and ties on telling us how we can like get into the industry. And now they're like running away from this, and they're going to go and try and find something else. Where I think that we could do a better job of really engaging with these kids through a form of communication that really resonates to them.
Well, it's also like, even before COVID, right? This has been an ongoing thing. People, the trades were getting older. A lot of people were leaving the trades. Now we look around and it's like so many people left the industry because it was a time for them. It was a good time for them to leave, because it was, COVID, shutdowns. Like, you know what? I'm going to take my retirement earlier, or I'm going to take my retirement now, or I'm going to do something else. But furthermore, it's like through the time of COVID, through everyone being home, everyone keeps talking about, like, I don't understand, like, how people aren't going back to work. It's like, for 2 years, people had to figure out alternative ways to make money. You can literally sit behind your computer and make money.
Yep.
And it's not like, it's not easier per se, but there's those opportunities where it's like some people just love being behind the computer and will just sit there and make money all day. And there's so many other opportunities to do that where it is peeling people out of the trade, that because I'm going to use this word lightly, but like it's easier to make an income rather than having to leave the house and bundle up and work in the cold and strain your body. It's like, I think about that kid that was like, there's other things I'm interested in, and I wanted to dig into that, where it's like, are you interested in something like that where you can work remotely or kind of just make an income, but you're interested in the trades from a hobby perspective? Because I think the hobby perspective in the trades is really, really high.
Yeah.
And very few people look at that as like, it's always going to be a hobby. I can't make a career out of this. My career is, Amazon sales or something like that, because I can do that whenever. Because
even the one kid who said that he was interested in the trades was to build his own house, and like that's not, you're not looking at it getting into the trades from a business perspective at that point, where that's not necessarily what we need to make things change.
But it's like I guess my point is like there's a lot of things working against people getting into the trades, and I agree with you. It's like there needs to be this, a better communication. Like the guys sitting to the left of us, they did a great job explaining their roles in this industry, but all three of them were like, it's hard. It's hard work. It's going to be rough. It's going to you're going to have to grind it out and start on the ground floor, and they're not wrong. But you're talking to a bunch of kids that are trying to figure out like, what's the golden ticket?
Yeah.
What, give me
how can I work the least and make the most?
And not in respect of them, it's not because they're lazy. It's like they want to understand how they grow to a solid career as quickly as possible. And it's not so much, in my opinion, it's not so much about doing less and getting paid more. It's I want to get paid more as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and like I don't know, when that was 20 years ago, 15 to 20 years ago, and even look at the cost of things then, where to look in and consider a trade where people are going to tell you that you're going to make less money, and like you go to buy a hamburger and it costs you $15, well, it's very easy when your mind is like very simple at that age and you don't understand life and the expenses and how things work, and you're just looking at that where it's like, well, I can go to McDonald's and get a meal and it's $12 and I'm going to get paid $20. So, that's basically 3/4 of an hour of pay for me to pay for one meal.
Yeah, you're trading time to eat.
Yeah, and so I think that, kids are going to look not necessarily how to work less, but there's got to be a way that they can make more money than just saying, hey, I'm working 40 hours a week and I'm getting paid X amount per hour.
The education needs to be behind like how you get to a solid career, a solid salary. And I think that's something that we could have done a better job, talking about it today and even in the future is like, let's open this up a little bit more. Like, what does an apprentice make, and how do they get to that next level? Like, what are my limitations? Could I make $100,000 a year?
Yeah.
Is that obtainable? Is that realistic? What does it take to do that? Because I can go and get my doctorate and make $300,000 a year and be a doctor, but it's like, okay, but also I understand that is however many years of schooling that is, and then however many years of actual practical, in field. There's those things tend to get ignored, and it tends to focus strictly on like that $300,000 salary.
Yep.
Where it's like, yes, whatever the path is between there, doesn't matter. Where it's like, I could sit down with someone and say, and they come to me and be like, Nick, I want to come work for you. I want to make $300,000 a year. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't just exist.
Yeah.
But you bring $300,000 worth of value to the table. Why wouldn't I want to pay you that? It's like, hey, I'll come in. I'm going to quadruple your sales, and I'm going to help build your entire labor force out with the best team. It's like, I'll pay you whatever you need. Like, you're bringing value, and it's being presented, and we're able to sell that. And I forget who it was, but it's like the easiest way to get a rate. I think it was Elon Musk that talked about this, but the easiest way to ask for a raise is figure out how long it takes you to do something, and then see if you can do it faster. And then when you can do it faster and you know that, you can communicate that. And it's not so much about the speed, it's about understanding what value you're bringing to the table for how much in return.
Yeah, I think that, you can't just ask for, you can, and a lot of times it's the way it's structured, but you've been somewhere for so long, so you deserve a raise. Well, I don't know, when you look at a small business and obviously like you're trying to manage expenses and everything else, it's not just about time put in. If you're going through the motions, like, I don't want to give you a raise. You're not doing anything different than last year. Maybe if things are more expensive, you show me that costs, but I'm not giving you a raise at that point because you're doing more. It's to offset costs, where it's like, if you want to raise, if you want to make a third more than you do this year, like, you got to do that on my end as well. I can't just foot that and take it out of, because I've established things and built the business to be able to support what I need to support. There's not just fluff in there where, I can just pay you more, I can charge my customers more. Like, no, how are we going to be more efficient? How are we going to reduce the amount of mistakes? How are you going to bring me that value? It is tough with kids in the younger generation too, because you don't understand the opportunities. And I even look, one of the reasons why people steered me out of the path that I have is because you're going to beat your body up, right? You're not going to be able to work like this forever.
Right.
Well, yeah, I hope that I can't work like this forever. But the goal is to do it for as long as I can, that I'm still happy. And then we have this amazing opportunity now to be able to put our feelers out there and network with people all over the country, all over the world, that we didn't have 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
100%.
So now if I'm 30 years into this and my body's beat and I don't have a company that can support me not working with the tool belt on, and I don't want to just manage a company for myself, I've now built a network of people that would hire me in a heartbeat to go work for them and not have a tool belt on.
Right.
And you didn't have that opportunity 20 years ago because everything, you kept everything close to your hip, and you didn't network with people in your area, with local contractors. Everything was hush hush and secret, and it was every man for themselves. And now you have that opportunity. So getting into the trades is that's that first step. It doesn't mean you're going to be swinging a hammer until you're 60. You could swing a hammer for 5 years, and then you meet somebody and you go get another job that was trade related, but maybe not what you were doing before. And I think that the opportunities on that end, especially with social and everyone putting stuff out on YouTube and really being able to network and speak and meet all these different people, has really opened up the opportunities for people in the trades, which isn't really spoken about that much.
And, even from a media perspective, like 20 years ago, you would be reading a magazine or maybe picking up a book, and there was few people that were contributing to those magazines because it wasn't very lucrative. Now let's flip to today. We personally know people that are making 6+ figures on social media by promoting what they do.
Yep.
And you yourself, myself, like both of us could take the path of, Tyler doesn't want to work for clients anymore. He's going to teach everything he knows about finished carpentry through the use of YouTube.
Yep.
And you could take all of your effort and put that into it and teach people and be paid for that, and be paid really well for that, to a point where there's probably an opportunity there where if you do it well enough and you put all your eggs in that basket, you could be making more money than you are busting your butt and hurting your body.
Yeah, and even right now, so I mean, to dig into business and everything else, like the way that I make money is by being very efficient, staying very lean, controlling my overhead, controlling my costs, and then delivering something that kind of differentiates me. But I'm still exchanging my hours for a paycheck. So in the past few years, I've realized that I can supplement that with either teaching things, partnering with different vendors, writing articles with Fine Home Building. There's a ton of opportunity out there for me, which a lot of times I can end up making more than I do swinging a hammer. Mm-hmm. So for me, I've transitioned into a little bit of each, and that keeps me still engaged with customers, getting to do the work that I enjoy, but I really get to pick and choose what projects I do. And then on the other end, I'm keeping doors open with with vendors and, the podcast and with you guys and with companies, that hire me directly to kind of teach what I know. So it kind of opens me up. I work a little bit less, so I'm not necessarily killing myself. But if you would have asked me this in 2011 when I started my business, like, this is what you would make, I'd laugh at you because
Right.
like, no, I'm not going to make money. I'll struggle through this. And, the blue collar, white collar thing, like right now, the way that I'm structured, and I have a very lean company that has no bragging rights for anything based on size. And it's like, I can make a lot more money than a lot of my white collar friends that I grew up with and went to college and by working with my hands.
Right.
And like by taking that path, and people just don't realize that. And people probably, even see, what do you do? Oh, you work by yourself. You have a helper. Yeah, you probably make in this range. And they don't understand the opportunity if you can structure things correctly.
Right. And it's also a patience game, right? Where it's, everything from like looking at 2011 to today with what you can do by leveraging social media, but also establishing your name, where you take that path of least resistance or fastest way to make as much money as possible. You end up you end up in the realm of mediocrity, or you end up in the realm of burning through clients and burning through projects and burning through resources because you're trying to make a bigger profit, where it's like that is there is the opportunity exists, and the more patient you are with understanding that, those things fall into place as long as you stick with putting your best work out and being truthful in the way that you go about it. And I think
you have to give yourself the time and the opportunity to learn and make mistakes. Right. Nobody's going to hire you to teach what you're doing, or Ken to teach a shop course if he didn't spend the time learning with his hands.
Right.
So that's all part of it. You have to really put the time in. And like you said earlier, it may not be easy, but I don't know anyone. I guess there's a few lucky people who have kind of stepped in shit, so to speak, but I don't know anyone who's successful that doesn't work hard. Like, it doesn't matter what you do. If you're going to work hard, you'll be successful.
Right. I mean, it's so rare. It's so rare that anyone falls into luck, and when they do they get an unfortunate heavy amount of press for it, but it's you talk to anyone that is uber successful, it's like, no, I've busted my ass for this.
Yeah.
And it's like, you even think about some of these A-list people that celebrities and big people in our society. They work tremendously hard, and I don't want to confuse that with, like, it's not a matter of like working around the clock or 20 hours a day or never sleeping or whatever the case is. It's about putting your best foot forward and always pushing to do your best and never settle. And it's like, going back, it's like, to slip into that side of mediocrity, it's like that's the normal person is going to be okay with not doing the extra credit, not putting in an extra hour or at the work, or you have your day job and then spending an hour or two at night on what you eventually want to do, your side gig, your eventual career. It's people fall into the unfortunate one source of income and not grabbing for growth.
Yeah, they think that that's kind of what they must succumb to. Like, that this is my life, I can't control anything. It's like, no, you can pretty much do what you want.
Yeah.
If you put your mind to it and you kind of don't relinquish control of your life and what you want to do. And I think of my kids, my older daughter will see something if I'm on my phone where it's like somebody on a dirt bike doing some trick. She'll be like, Daddy, do you think I can do that? And I'm like, yeah, you could do that if you put the time and effort into it, right? Like, could you do that now? No. like, do I really think that you'll be able to do that someday? Like, maybe not, because
Right.
I don't know if you enjoy that or you want to work that hard at
Right.
something. But if you did and you wanted to get to that, like, I'll help you get there and we can figure out what you need to do. And then that's up to you to figure out if you can do that. But I'm not going to be like, hey, you can do anything you want. Like,
Right.
no, if you want to do that, yeah, that's super cool. And I do believe that you have it in you to get to that level, but you're not there yet.
Right.
And it's going to be a lot of work to get there. And it's just like any elite athlete, most of the people, when they get to like that pinnacle, they're all from a competitive level. They're all equal.
Right.
Like, really, it's such the margin between the physicality of these people and how well they perform is so slim that it just comes down to the mental, like, toughness of
Right.
these people. And maybe somebody's stronger because mentally they have that edge, or they're faster because mentally they do better. Somebody cutting weight, they can perform better than somebody else who's not because they've trained themselves mentally to do that. It is the same thing with work and business and everything else. A lot of times, people aren't more talented than you. It's not just that they work harder. It's that they have a mental edge. And it makes such a huge difference. And I think that people, we're in this society that kind of expects to be handed something, and you go to school and you're going to graduate and you're going to get a job that pays X amount. And, like, if that's the mentality that you have, you're just going to flounder. Like, you're going to be stagnant your whole life. If you really want to be successful, you have to go after it.
It's funny. I saw something recently. It was about Usain Bolt, and it was like he's only ran 115 seconds professionally ever, and he's made $115 million doing it, and that's $1 million a second. I was like, you're discrediting the thousands of hours that he's put into it, and not necessarily
His entire
discrediting.
life.
It's more about the fact that, like, you're focusing on, like, everything, like what we see. And exactly what you're saying, it's like there's so much that goes beyond doing a trick on this dirt bike. And it's funny that you bring that up because my daughter is young. My oldest she's 5, and she was playing soccer. First day she goes out there, scores 7 goals. No one else scores a goal. She's on top of the world. This is amazing. But I love soccer. We go back out the next day, and she doesn't score a goal. Someone, like, steals a ball away from her. She cried, and I'm like, all right, I have no idea how to react to this. Like, and my wife is like wants her to do it, and it's like we're trying to, like, be supportive, but also, like, trying to explain, like, you don't need to cry about this. Like, some days you win, some days you lose. And I sat her down on the sideline. I'm like, Marley, Dad goes to work every day, and most of the time I lose.
Yeah.
And she's like, you do? I'm like, almost every day. And she's like, I'm like, it's okay to lose. Sometimes we're not going to be able to do it. But if I keep practicing, that's when I get better, and that's when I win. And she's 5, so, like, she heard it, doesn't totally understand it, goes back on the field, doesn't score, cries again. We quit soccer. But as I think about, like, being a parent and thinking about, like, fast forward to these kids 16 to 18 years old sitting in this room, it's like we have to break. There's still that barrier. They're still young enough where it's like they don't want to get into something that they're not going to enjoy or be good at, or not have an easy entry point into it, where it's like, if it's overly cumbersome to get a job in this industry, why would they put the effort into trying to find that job? It's like you mentioned, like, why, like, 16, 18 years old, like, and they open it up, like, if anyone wants to come up and talk to these guys one-on-one, feel free. It's like, yeah, everyone pretended they had to go to the bathroom and left.
Yeah, it's like the lady sitting over there with, like, the business suit on.
Right.
And like no, they're not going to want to go talk to her.
No. And it's like that's why we got to a point where it was quiet, so we flipped it back and, like, started asking them questions. And we get out on the show floor. I don't know if you were here, but we get on the show floor, and a group of them walk by, like, oh, hey, you guys were the ones that talked. And we're like, hey, yeah. They're like, it was really nice to meet you. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah.
And it's like that whole group was the group that was, like, the quietest.
Yeah.
And it's like, that by them saying something, they wanted to engage.
They need somebody to connect with.
Right. And it's like, oftentimes it's someone that is driven by a counselor, where it's like, does that counselor truly have a grasp on, nothing against the ones that were here, but truly have a grasp or a good connection with these students, where it's like, there needs to be that help for them to get into something that they like, rather than guidance to like, here are the careers that you should consider. It's like, based on what?
Yeah.
Based on pay, based on, my height, based on my, like, whatever it is that says that, my type of person is a good police officer. It's like, I don't want to be a police officer. It's like, I know, but you got the haircut for it, so you should be a cop. It's like, I think that to be a good counselor, like, you have to fully understand what they want and their needs and what they're hoping to gain. And, if it's this industry, it needs to be an easier path to understand what the industry has to truly offer.
Yeah, and like making sure that you're relatable to these young kids and approachable. If prior to that conversation, if you would just sit up there and kind of be cold and pitch them your business and why you should come work for you, they probably wouldn't come up and say hi to you. If you're able to make that connection, even you're making yourself relatable to these people, and they're gonna feel comfortable enough and not feel that vulnerability where they can go up and say hi and thanks, we appreciate it. But if you kind of create this untouchable person, or this person who's very cold or very professional, that's what these kids have never been able to relate to in their entire lives, and you think that you're going to be able to connect with them, kind of putting that foot forward, and it's like, no, you need to fit in with them. You need to kind of be one of them. You have to ensure that they understand, like, I wasn't fit for school. I didn't like school. I'm right there with you. Like, what you're going through, I went through 20 years ago. I can certainly relate to that. And I think that's when they kind of let their guard down and realize, hey, these people aren't that much different than us. They were in our shoes 20 years ago. And they've done things with their lives that, have proven to be successful and established themselves. And it's also like, if you would have looked at me when I was 16, 17 years old, there's no way that you'd be like, oh, that's the same person, like a shell of myself. And I think that to show them, that this is who they can be, and there's nothing to be ashamed of with the path that they're looking to go down, and that they're not less than anyone else. You're kind of giving them the wings that they need, whether it's this career, this industry, anything. These kids, they just need somebody to believe in them, and kind of build them up instead of tear them down, make them feel comfortable, and get rid of that vulnerability, and that, they're afraid of a lot of things right now. They may not fit in. Their family may not be as well off as other people in the town. They can't afford college, and they don't want to tell the people around them that they can't afford college. And like, as a young kid, that's fucking embarrassing.
Yeah.
Like, when everyone else can, and you're like, oh, you're going to county school?
Right.
And like, what can you say?
And it can be debilitating.
Yeah. And then like, they're not going to go do anything.
Right.
They're going to sit at home. And it's going to take till like they're 23 and their parents kick them out of the house, and then like
go find
they're
a job.
In slow motion,
Do you feel 20 years older than those kids?
No, I mean, yes and no.
It's funny. I when I sit there, I don't feel like, I feel like I could hang out with them.
Oh yeah, it is funny because I don't know. I guess I've always, while I'm mature in some senses, I'm very immature, and it's an intentional immature.
Yeah, and I guess it's one of those things, like, especially as parents, when it's like you think back when you were a kid and your parents, like, you realize your parents didn't have their shit together.
Exactly.
I don't have my shit together, and it's like I used to think that they did, and it's the same thing with these kids. It's like, they're looking up to us, and exactly to your point, it's like, there has to be the vulnerability between them and us, where it's like, hold on, like, don't take where we are today as like unobtainable.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things that we continue to struggle with, and I think that's a big part of, educating, is like, this is about community, and especially nowadays it's way more about collaboration, and that's why a lot of my advice circled around being open with people that you look up to, look for mentors, look for builders that you would like to work for, and have open conversations. There's going to be plenty of people that say no, I'm not interested in helping you or mentoring you or telling you how to start your business or hiring you. But there's also plenty of people that are more than willing and would be excited about it. Where it's like if someone came to me and said, hey, I want to come work for you for a year because I want to start my own business eventually, like, I like that because like he's got that mentality. He's got that person has the ambition to go off on their own. And for me, selfishly, I'm going to try to make such a great, culture for them where it's like, you know what, I don't want to leave. Yeah. This is awesome, but I respect that. And it's like if my one big piece of advice during that talk was the fact, if I had to do it again, I would have found someone that I looked up to as a builder and went and worked for them for a year or two prior to starting my own. And, and try to be, and at the time, like, try to be more open and honest with myself and that person that this isn't my end goal, because I think a lot of people go into this as like, this is forever. I want to work here forever. But in the back of their mind, it's like, no, I don't. I'm just saying that so I get the job.
Yeah. And like, I don't know if you have to go work for somebody early on in your career and even take a pay cut, and you think that you can learn from that, consider that your investment. Like totally. A lot of kids at that age are considering college their investment, where it's a financial investment and you're going into debt. You're working for somebody. Maybe you take a pay cut. You're not going into debt like a college loan. No. Maybe you have to tighten up your lifestyle a little bit.
But you continue to make an income and you continue while progressing.
Yeah, and that's like you're learning, so that's your investment, you know. So maybe you're making a little less money, but you're learning so much that you can take with you. When you're 16, 17 years old, 2 years seems like eternity. And like, we're not that old. I'm 35, and 2 years seems like if you're like, oh, you have to do that for 2 years, I'm like, that's nothing. Like, I do anything for 2 years will be gone before you know it.
Right. A good saying, too, where it's like, it's you can either be 2 years from now, you can either be in the same position or you could have been completed that. So to start something that's going to take 2 years, it's like 2 years is going to come no matter what. So you can either choose to have that opportunity, take that opportunity and choose to be in that position 2 years from now, or be in the same exact position that you are today.
Yeah.
And I think when you think about it that way, it's like, all right, well, I'm going to get there anyway, so why not bring this with me?
Yeah. For sure. It was cool to see them. I think that it does put some perspective on our age. You asking how old we are. It doesn't seem that long ago that I was in those shoes. I feel like I could still like relate to them. I don't feel like I'm gonna like hang out with those kids and be like, this old dude, but they probably do see it that way, right? They're probably like, oh,
that dude has gray hairs in his beard.
Yeah, I could still be cool.
Totally, especially with that denim jacket.
Yeah, man, denim everything today. But at the same time, like, I don't know, if you were asked me, I'm going to hang out with those kids or hang out with them like 60-year-old dudes. Like, I think I could hang with some 60-year-old dudes, but I think I'd rather hang with those kids.
Well, they also have like that, the ambition for like future.
Yeah.
And I think that's what is probably so appealing. To kind of summarize, like, or to kind of wrap this up, like, that conversation, unfortunately, it was a smaller group than anticipated, but, a few of the counselors came up to us after and was talking about, like, they don't typically do this for this career. They typically do it for, like, criminal justice and yada, yada. It's like, this needs to be, like,
one of the options.
And it needs to be talked about. And I think that, hopefully that this podcast and, our presence in general continues to build the stamina behind what this industry has to offer. And, frankly, there's so many paths. And, for me, something I said up there is like, the reason I do this is because the ability to express my creativity through something so tangible.
And I think even thinking of getting into the construction industry, if you look at it from, hey, I'm going to go work for somebody, I'm going to be a general laborer, I'm going to clean up wood piles, load a dumpster, and push a broom. If that's your mindset, like, yeah, that's probably all you're going to do. But that's
you should want more.
Yeah, like if you get there and you push yourself and you learn and you pester people to learn and you hustle, you're going to work your way up. And then like when you've outgrown those positions with those companies, you're bound to be doing something better than that at that point. The only limitation that you have is going to be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't work with that company, go get a job with another company.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work in this area, go move somewhere else. There's always options to do things, but you have to make that happen. Nobody's going to make that happen for you. If you just depend on what lands, if you're only going to eat what lands on your lap, you're going to go hungry. I think that you got to get out there and hunt and find what you want and make yourself happy that way. And I think you'll have whatever career path you take, you're going to have far more success, and you'll be a lot happier and feel more fulfilled going that route.
Totally. Well, to wrap up here, first off, the fact that we're doing a live event is huge.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It has been a while. Looking forward to Orlando this year at IBS. Hopefully connect with some of you guys. Want to thank our podcast sponsor, Northeastern Young Lumber Execs, as well as Duration Molding and Millwork and Reno Run for keeping this podcast going. So signing out live from the LBM.
In Providence, Rhode Island. It was snowing on my way here last night.
It was snowing.
From like New York on, I'm like, it's really snowing right now as I'm driving.
Yep.
But it was just flurries.
Yeah, I hit our job site on the way here because we have the one down in Providence, and I got on site and I was like, man,
it's winter.
It's winter.
Which is funny because Thanksgiving was a while ago and I still don't feel like it's winter. And usually like Thanksgiving it starts getting cold. I'm like, yeah, it's winter time. And driving up last night, I was
the soil's like not sure if
already.
it's frozen. If it is, if it isn't, it's like all our lumber got dropped. So now all the lumber is like stuck together. It's like you couldn't just wait.
Yeah.
It can't just be warm. So let's pray for a mild winter.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks, guys.